Tell me if you've heard this one before. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis just took a good thing and made it worse. Recently, DeSantis signed into law a bill that, on the surface, is meant to let students at charter and online schools participate in extracurricular activities at public or private schools. I'm okay with that. Public schools typically have pretty robust competition within a state, and I am all for allowing other students access to that competition as long as it's regulated. That part doesn't really bother me, and it already happens in a lot of states. But tucked away in that bill is a section that will allow high school athletes to spend 4 minutes before playoff games taking control of the loudspeakers and telling Muslims, Jews, and atheists that they're going to burn in hell for all eternity. That's hardly an exaggeration. There will now be an opening for pre-game prayers over the public address system at high-profile public high school athletic events. That's what this bill is really about. House Bill 225 says that any high school athletic association that includes public schools, like say the Florida High School Athletic Association, which regulates all interscholastic activities across the state, must allow participating schools in a state series, which means playoff games, to make brief opening remarks, if requested by the school, using the public address system at the event. That's a very roundabout way of saying that playoff games managed by the state must allow participating schools to hijack the loudspeakers before the events and say whatever they want. Those remarks, the bill says, cannot be longer than 2 minutes at a time, 4 minutes total. And the governor's office has explicitly said those remarks can include public prayer. In practice, that means private Christian schools that are allowed to participate in public school athletic events will now be able to request the use of the PA system before a playoff game, where representatives from both teams can spend 2 minutes each telling the crowd to accept Jesus, implying that not doing so will lead to eternal damnation. The law purposely takes a hands-off approach to what can be said over the PA system, the only caveat being that the comments cannot be derogatory, rude, or threatening. But you and I both know that a Christian saying, "Let's bow our heads and thank God," is both a standard Christian prayer and a threat against non-Christians. Like, what are you gonna say if I don't bow my head? What happens to me in eternity if I don't acknowledge your God? But I'm guessing threatening is only in the eyes of the Christian lawmakers who supported this law. Also, the way the law is written, that means schools can decide for themselves who speaks, and therefore what gets said. That gives an upper hand to any schools, even public schools with a Christian majority who want to use their platform to proselytize. You know non-Christians are not going to get equal opportunities here. A rebellious young Satanist will not get control of the PA system. Schools can always find a neutral way to promote the faith of their choice, like by way of a team vote or coach selection. This is the sort of thing that federal courts have repeatedly said they cannot do as a way to shove prayer into public school graduation ceremonies. But Florida Republicans are now allowing it at football games. By the way, there's nothing in this bill prohibiting a team from publicly praying for God to give them an edge over the other side. There's nothing prohibiting a speaker from condemning LGBTQ people by saying, "Let's all avoid sin," wink wink. There's nothing prohibiting a school from urging the crowd to give themselves over to Christ. Because that's not really a threat, is it? While it would technically be legal for a Muslim student to lead the crowd in a prayer to Allah, or an atheist student to urge people to ditch God entirely, that's almost certainly never going to happen. This bill is nothing more than a Trojan horse to allow public demonstrations of prayer at athletic competitions, even though student athletes and coaches are already permitted to pray on their own. And after the Joe Kennedy debacle at the Supreme Court, in full view of everyone else. This law isn't about allowing prayer because prayer isn't illegal. This is about making a show of Christian dominance using public school athletes and public stadiums and public equipment as the vessels. So why are Florida Republicans doing this? I mean, besides the fact that they are Republicans in Florida. It's all because of a controversy that occurred in 2015. That December, 2 private schools, Cambridge Christian School and University Christian School, made it all the way to the championship game in the state's Class 2A football playoffs. Before the game, one of Cambridge Christian School's administrators wanted to say prayers over the public address system. But the Florida High School Athletic Association, which oversees all games, correctly said no. This was a state-run event. It was televised. It was at a public facility. The state owned the PA system. It would be illegal, they suggested, for Christians to take over the loudspeaker system for religious purposes, even if both schools playing in the game happened to be Christian, because that might give the impression that the state was sponsoring or promoting religion. Obviously, no one was stopping the Christian players and coaches from praying on their own. Even together, because these were private Christian schools and they can do that. But as we all know by now, conservative Christians don't believe prayer counts unless they can shove it in your face, and everyone watches them do it. God doesn't listen to their prayers unless they are loud and obnoxious about it, just like the Bible says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 5. I should mention that the Christian school eventually filed a lawsuit over this, and it's been in the courts ever since. Basically, judges keep throwing out the lawsuit because what the Christians wanted to do was illegal, but it hasn't been entirely dismissed by appellate courts yet. We're still waiting on a ruling. Since 2015, Florida Republicans have tried to pass this law allowing prayers over the loudspeakers at playoff games, but the bills never jumped through all the necessary hurdles. Until now. And now, it is a law. It's irrelevant that the law requires an announcement beforehand saying all remarks are not endorsed by and does not reflect the views and/or opinions of the Athletic Association, because disclaimers don't undo the damage. And you better believe Christians are already eager to pounce on the opportunity. The next time Cambridge Christian returns to play for a state championship, and we will return, we will pray over the loudspeaker before kickoff, Cambridge Christian School head Sean Minks said. It's no surprise that DeSantis signed the bill into law during a ceremony at Cambridge Christian School. That school administrator may have to wait though. Last year, his varsity football team's record was 6-4. In 2021, it was 2-8. So maybe instead of praying, they should try practicing more? In case you're wondering if the Florida High School Athletic Association will put up a fight against this new law, the answer is probably not, because they won't be able to. The same law DeSantis just signed also says that the board of that organization will no longer consist of 16 representatives, most of whom are elected to their seats. Instead, the board will now have 12 members, 8 of whom are appointed by the governor. So DeSantis will be allowed to replace the current board with his conservative Christian cronies. Furthermore, the law requires any changes to the association's bylaws to be approved by the state's Board of Education, which DeSantis also has control over. The Board of Education also gets to approve the association's executive director and any budget approved by the board. DeSantis took over the organization overseeing public high school athletic events and injected Christianity into its most high-profile games. That's not to say there's no legal path forward. The Supreme Court ruled in 2000 in Santa Fe Independent School District versus Doe that prayers delivered on school property at school-sponsored events over the school's public address system violated the Establishment Clause. But me pointing that out suggests the Supreme Court cares about legal precedent. which the current Supreme Court very clearly does not, especially when it comes to anything involving church-state separation. In fact, the Santa Fe ruling said that the district policy allowing those prayers failed what's called the Lemon Test, which is a standard this court has said no longer applies anyway. So even if there is a legal challenge, it probably won't get anywhere. The Florida law goes into effect on July 1st, which means when the football playoffs take place next fall, Jesus will almost certainly be on the field for all the big games.